Hello, everyone. I hope you're all doing well, and welcome back to another edition of Everything I Watched Last Month. Except this time, you're getting two for the price of one, because you're not just getting January, but you're also getting December as well. Now, you're probably wondering why didn't I give December its own video? Now, there are two reasons for that. One, by the time I realised I hadn't done one for December, it kind of seemed a little bit too late to do one. And the other reason being that the majority of films that I watched in December ended up making my best of the year video in some shape or form. So it kind of felt a little bit redundant repeating myself, but at the same time, I kind of understand the fact that, yeah, I kind of feel like I should have done a December video just to kind of, make it chronologically make more sense and fit in with all the other months. So, the way this video is going to work is quite simple. Everything that I watched in December, I'm going to go through very, very quickly. I'm not going to give it that much time at all. I'm just going to rapidly run through everything I watched in December. And then after that, I'm then going to tackle January like I would any of the other videos in this series. Sound good? Good. So, let's quickly do December. The first film I watched in December was Venom Let There Be Carnage. It's shit. That's all I really need to say about that one. After that, I then watched the Netflix animated film The Summit of the Gods, which I only found out after watching it was based off of a manga. This animated film is really good, and if you saw my best of the year video, you will know that it made my honorable mentions. I was really tempted to put it on the top 20 list, but I just didn't. But it is very good. Go and check it out. Then I watched Jane Campion's The Power of the Dog, which is a film that has grown on me over time, and I absolutely love it now, and I do think it is one of last year's best films. Then I watched this foreign film called Azor, or Azor, or however you're meant to pronounce it. I didn't know much about this film going into it, but I came away really disappointed because I'm going to be honest, it's kind of boring. Usually these political sort of dialogue driven thrillers can be right up my street, but this film really did not hook me, and I found it quite tedious to get through. Then I watched Encounter, which is this weird hybrid of a road trip movie, a drama, and a sci-fi film, all kind of blended into one. It's alright. It could have been a lot better than it actually ended up being. But the best thing in this film, without a doubt, is Riz Ahmed and his main chemistry between the two younger actors. After that, I then watched Gagarine, which is this beautiful little French film that just barely scraped into the bottom of my top 20 list last year. If you've not seen it, it's currently on Mubi in the UK. Give it a watch, you won't be disappointed. Then I watched the Val Kilmer documentary Val, really good documentary. It made my honourable mentions last year. It's very emotional and very thought provoking. It's really good. Then I watched The Last Duel, which is easily Ridley Scott's best film since The Martian. It is also really good. Then I watched The French Dispatch, Wes Anderson's newest film. It's really good. You're going to see a theme with December's one. It's really good. It's the most Wes Anderson film he's made to date. And if that sounds like your cup of tea, it is really well done. Then I watched Spider Man No Way Home. I don't really have much to say about this film that I haven't already said. I've already done one full video on this film. I've already talked about it quite a bit in my best of the year list and the recent collaboration that I did with Sawyer Sabel. Basically, all you need to know is that I love it. That's all I need to really say. Then I watched the film Drive My Car, which I was really excited to see because it was getting a ridiculous amount of praise all over Twitter and with reviews, etc. This is an interesting one. As I was watching it, I thought it was good. There was something holding me back from loving it, and I didn't quite know what it was. But in the time that has passed since me watching that film, I think I kind of love it now, and I feel a little bit annoyed that I didn't let it sink in a bit more before doing my best of the year list, because if I'd done, say, my best of the year list now, it probably would have made the list, or even the honourable mentions. After that, I then watched the Disney Plus MCU series Hawkeye. The best thing about the show is easily Haley Steinfeld and Jeremy Renner's chemistry. Again, everything I have to say about this show, I said in the recent collab I did with Sawyer over on his channel, so if you want to know my full thoughts on Hawkeye, go and watch that video on his channel. Then I watched Mike Mills's new film, Come On, Come On. It's really good. I'm so glad Woody Norman has been nominated for a BAFTA for his performance. He is very good in the film. I don't think it's as good as 20th Century Women, which is the film Mike Mills made before this, but it's still a very good film, and there's a reason it made my best of the year list last year. Then I watched Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, which is a staple at Christmas in my family. We watch it every year. There's like 3 films we have on rotation every Christmas. That, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, and Muppet Christmas Carol. Those 3 films at some point end up going on rotation every Christmas, and this year it ended up being Home Alone 2, which I think is slightly better than the first one, purely for Tim Curry. And finally, the last film that I watched in not just December but 2021 as a whole was Don't Look Up, directed and written by Adam McKay. Listen, I don't hate this film, but I don't love it either. I can see what it's trying to do. There are many points where what it is trying to do kind of falls flat a little bit. But that being said, the overall execution I didn't think was that bad. The first half of the film is very choppy, but once it finds a groove, it isn't that awful. I actually did find some things to enjoy about this film. And there are some throwaway lines that I legitimately found funnier than the jokes that the film was legitimately trying to force down your throat. Cool, so that is December out of the way. Now on to January, and I'm going to give you a warning in advance. I did not watch much during January, but that being said, everything I did watch in this month straight up slapped. In some shape or form, everything was a banger that I watched in January. So, the first film that I watched in not just January but the whole year was Paul Thomas Anderson's Phantom Thread. I've been interested in seeing this one since it came out in 2017. I've never seen it, so this was a first time viewing for me. And this is one of those films that grew on me the more it went on. At the start, I was on board with what it was doing, and I was like, okay, I'm intrigued to see where this is going to go. And by the end, I was completely wrapped up in the environment, the tone, the characters, just everything that the film was presenting me. And I immediately wanted to revisit it. I love this film. I wouldn't necessarily put it at the top of my PTA ranking list. I still think the top spot goes to The Master or Punch Drunk Love, one of those two. But trust me, Phantom Thread is a very strong third. After that, I then did my first cinema trip of the year, which was to go and see The Matrix Resurrections. If you've seen the video I did talking about the Matrix movies as a whole, you will know that I admire this movie more and more over time. I don't think it's particularly perfect, and it is a bit choppy in places. But that being said, I do admire this film more than I love it. And you can definitely expect me to buy it on Blu-ray as soon as it is available. Yeah, I just had a blast with this film. Like I said, it's not fantastic in the grand scheme of things, but it is incredibly entertaining. Then I watched Terrence Malick's The Thin Red Line for the first time. I didn't know what to expect with this one because this film is always referred to as the other war film that came out in 1998 that got overshadowed by Saving Private Ryan. And to an extent, I can kind of see why it always got overshadowed by Saving Private Ryan, because Saving Private Ryan is a very to the point film. You don't really have to think about it. It just shows you what it's trying to tell you, and that's kind of it. Whereas The Thin Red Line is almost like the slightly pretentious older brother of Saving Private Ryan. And that I don't mean pretentious in a negative way. I actually think what the film is trying to say works, but I can easily see some people saying this film is a pretentious load of bollocks. Personally, I found this film to be way more immersive than I initially thought it was going to be. And I think that kind of helps that I watched the Criterion release of this film, which really does the cinematography justice. Every single image just pops off of the screen. Um, yeah, I really like this film, and again, it's another one of those examples of a film that I liked on first viewing, but the more time I give it to sink in, it just gets better and better over time. Then I watched the Studio Ghibli film Porco Rosso. I don't really have much to say about this film other than the fact that it delivers exactly what you kind of expect from a Studio Ghibli film. It's heartwarming, it's whimsical, it's quirky, the animation is gorgeous, and I never knew that Michael Keaton voicing a pig was something I needed in my life. After that, I then watched The Father, which was absolutely fantastic. There was a part of me that was a bit worried, thinking that it might have been just this Oscar baity sort of film that came out a couple of years ago that was a little bit overhyped. But after watching it, I kind of love it. Um, that being said, I don't think it's a film I will want to see in any time soon, purely because of how heavy the film can be at times and how accurate its portrayal of dementia can be. But that being said, it finds some incredibly simple yet creative ways to portray Alzheimer's in this film, that I'm surprised no one's ever thought of before. That like these things are so simple. It's like, why has no one thought of that? Simple things such as replacing the actress playing a character between scenes to really show that confusion in a visual sense of the main character. And I really like that. Plus the cinematography isn't anything mind blowing, but in terms of the use of color, and the use of location, I think it is absolutely brilliant. And in terms of how it's written, I genuinely wouldn't know where to start with writing something like this. Like it genuinely, it kind of perplexed me how tight everything about this film was, especially in terms of its writing. Because I was like, I think after this film had finished, I was like, how do you even write something like that? Have it be this complex with its portrayal of dementia, but still have it make cohesive sense and have it be as tight as it is. Like, it just impressed me more than anything else. And then after that, I finally watched the movie that Film Twitter has not shut the fuck up about since 2019. And that is Celine Sciamma's Portrait of a Lady on Fire. There was a bit of me that was a little bit worried about this film. Was it being overhyped? Was I going to go into this film and not love it as much as everyone else? And those worries did stay with me for like the first half an hour of this film. After that, they just immediately got washed away. This film is gorgeous. That is the best word I can use to sum up this film in almost every aspect, whether it's the cinematography, the story, the performances, the characters, just everything in general. This film is gorgeous. It is such an engrossing movie. And there are many points where you think it could delve into pretentious territory, I guess you could say, but it always finds a way to keep you on board and never deviate from the core things it's trying to show and tell you in terms of its themes and its story. I just really, really loved this film more than I thought I would. I immediately wanted to put it back on as soon as it had finished. Then, in a slightly drastic change of pace, I watched Jonathan Glazer's Sexy Beast. um, Again, I didn't quite know what to expect with this film, um, but I ended up really enjoying it. The best way I can describe this film is that it almost feels like the angsty, edgier brother of Guy Ritchie's Snatch, which makes sense because they both came out, I think, in the same year. And whereas Snatch, for the most part, is a fairly straightforward, gangster crime film with humor in it, Sexy Beast still has the crime elements and the humorous elements, but just feels like it's a bit angrier than Snatch is. And half of that is down to Ben Kingsley's performance. He steals every single scene he is in, and he is just chewing up the scenery. And I absolutely loved his performance in this film. It's so over the top, and in any other film it probably wouldn't work, but here it just does. Um, Literally every time he gets a chance to insult someone, it is the oh my god, the dialogue is fucking golden. It is so funny, but so painful as well. It's almost like the stuff that Fletcher says in Whiplash, but kind of cranked up a notch and with a lot more swearing. I loved everything about this film. I think it's fantastic. It's definitely one of Ray Winston's best performances as well, at least that I've seen to this point. It's just a really fun and engaging movie that again doesn't try to do more than it sets out to do. You get these rather trippy sequences that don't outstay their welcome. They're just there enough to intrigue you. Um, but the film as a whole, especially considering it's only an hour and a half, again, never outstays its welcome. It knows exactly what it's trying to do. It tells a very tight and cohesive story that is very intriguing and gets more intriguing as it goes on. And I'm kind of glad it doesn't outstay its welcome because I know some gangster films can kind of get a bit caught up in the moment, whereas Sexy Beast just kind of goes, "This is what you get," and that's it. After that, I then watched Mass, which is the directorial debut of Fran Kranz, the same guy that played the stoner in The Cabin in the Woods. Yeah, you heard me right, that guy. Um, I was really intrigued by this film, and it's one that I'd been wanting to watch since I heard about it last year. And it annoys me because if I had seen this film last year when it was released, at least in America anyway, I know it would have made probably near the top of my best of the year list. But unfortunately, I watched it this month and I didn't get a chance to add it because I'd already made the video. But you can kind of gauge from me saying that I absolutely loved this film. This film is an hour and 40 minutes of just four people talking in a room, and it is some of the most riveting filmmaking I have seen in a very long time. It's like 12 Angry Men levels of good. That's what we're talking about, especially in terms of a self-contained movie that is about just people talking. 12 Angry Men usually for me is the bar that I set myself whenever I watch one of these dialogue driven movies that doesn't really do much else. It's just people in a room talking. 12 Angry Men is the bar that I set myself mentally. And though Mass probably doesn't surpass 12 Angry Men, it's very fucking close. I'm not going to say too much about the story of the film other than the fact that it is two sets of parents of two children that were involved in an incident a couple of years ago. I'm not going to say what the incident exactly is because I didn't know what it was before going into the film. And the way that the dialogue in the film gradually hints at certain things and then just suddenly drops what the thing was halfway through the film just makes it more and more impactful, in my opinion, anyway. And not knowing what exactly it is that the children were involved in just makes it more engaging, in my opinion. On top of that, you get some of the best performances, again, that I've seen in quite a long time. Jason Isaacs and Ann Dowd specifically are incredible in this film, and I'm so glad Ann Dowd is nominated for Best Supporting Actress at the BAFTAs. I'm so happy to see that. But the performances are all great. The writing is so tight and incredibly precise. The directing as well, and the specific use of certain shots, again, is really, really, really good. Because again, with these sorts of films where it's just a group of people talking in a room, you really need to think of some ways to use the camera that keep the audience engaged but don't seem like the camera work is starting to get in the way of the important stuff, which is what the characters are talking about. And thankfully, Fran Kranz knows exactly where to put the camera at right times. And occasionally, and I mean this like in a very, very sparing sense. Occasionally, he will leave the confinement of the room to give you just a couple of seconds to breathe and then immediately dunk you straight back in to the conversation. And then the final film that I watched in January was the brand new Netflix anthology film thing that's also stop motion, called The House. I didn't know much about this going into it, other than the fact that it was stop motion and that it was 3 stories about the same location being told in stop motion form. Um, I really like this film. I don't love it, but I really like it. I have a soft spot for stop motion animation, whether it's Wallace and Gromit or Fantastic Mr. Fox. I always have a soft spot for that sort of thing. And this film really does deliver some really impressive stop motion work. In terms of the 3 stories that it is telling, I really liked how the first 2 delved into elements of horror a lot more than I was expecting. Like, I knew this was slightly more adult than your typical animated thing. But the way the stories, especially the first one, delve into horror elements really surprised me. And it even got to the point where the first 2 stories legitimately unsettled me at points and were genuinely quite creepy. And I have to applaud the film for that. The third story, I liked how that ended on a more hopeful note. But yeah, those first 2 stories can get really uncomfortable at times, and I love the fact that the film just does that. So, guys, that is everything I watched in not just January, but December as well. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know in the comments some of your thoughts of these films if you have seen them. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Bye.